an issue that uh, it is either you are excited about this time of the year, or like myself, you cringe during this time of the year. But either way, here in the United States, it occurs every year, and for some of us every quarter. But it is tax time, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. As always, we thank everyone who has been listening to the podcast. We appreciate the support, and we invite and welcome all of the new listeners who have joined the podcast in recent weeks, or if you are listening for the first time, thank you. As always, if this information is enlightening and you feel that it is beneficial, we do ask that you please subscribe to the podcast so you can be notified when each episode is released, and that is done every Friday. Also, you can like the videos that we place on YouTube. We put out a new video every Friday at 3 p.m. And then also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and so you can be notified as well. But as always, we appreciate it and thank you for the support. So today I am going to talk about an issue that it is either you are excited about this time of the year, or like myself, you cringe during this time of the year. But either way, here in the United States, it occurs every year, and for some of us every quarter. But it is tax time, ladies and gentlemen. It is tax time. Tax time is rapidly approaching. And what I want to talk about today is I'm going to talk a little bit about taxes, but I really want to go more in depth on where do your taxes go. And I'm going to focus on federal taxes today, as opposed to state and local. But, one of the benefits of doing doing a podcast is that you get to research whatever topic you want to research, and then, you get surprising information about, how certain things work, particularly in a country of this size and this magnitude. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about taxes. I'm going to talk about taxes just in general, how we're taxed, and then also where those taxes go, and maybe give a couple of recommendations. Now, I'm a little hesitant to give recommendations because, as I always say, this is information. I'm not a tax expert or a financial expert. This information is for consumption and information purposes only. So I don't know if I'm going to give recommendations because I don't want anyone to take this as advice. This is, again, I'm just a podcast host, and I research topics and provide that information. I encourage everyone to please do your own research, regardless of the topic that I'm talking about. But today, taxes. Let's talk about taxes. So, in the United States, mid-April is usually when taxes are due. I'm trying to think about the date as I'm talking, but basically, taxes are due, or you have to file for taxes, I should say. You have to file for your taxes. But certain businesses, taxes are sometimes paid on a quarterly basis. But for general purposes, most people see the mid-April 17th, 15th as tax time, and so you have to file a tax return. Now, filing a tax return requires you as an individual or business to report the income that you have generated for the previous tax year. So in 2023, you're required to report your income for 2022, so on and so forth. And so with that, I said, where is this money going? I'm like, because I've paid taxes for decades now, and I haven't. I have a good understanding of where it goes, but I really wanted to understand, where does it go? Where does it go? So I want to talk about that. But first, let me talk about this year. So it's been reported that for many people who file income taxes this year, many people look forward to this time of the year because they believe that, well, in a lot of cases, they may get back a tax refund, which is just money that you have already paid into the system. And when you file your taxes, a portion of that is given back based on your expenses and deductions. And again, this is not a tax program or financial literacy. A financial advising program. So I'm not going to go too much into it. But basically, that's what a tax refund is. You pay money into the system during the year, and then you file and you're given some money back. So a lot of times, this time of the year is exciting for some people because they see it as, a windfall, so to speak. Interestingly enough, this year it's been reported that refunds will be significantly less than they were in previous years, or at least the previous year. And matter of fact, I was reading an article here from CNBC, and they noted here that the IRS reports that the average refund for this year, will be around $2,900, and that's about an 11% drop from the average refund last year. Which was basically around $3,300. So, for many people who are expecting a refund, or usually expect a refund around this time of year when they file their taxes, don't be surprised, but that tax refund will be a lot smaller than you saw last year or even in previous years. Matter of fact, WPRI, which is a news station in Rhode Island, talked about this. So let me play this because they kind of explained a little bit why the tax refund will be a little bit lower. So let me play that clip, and then I'll come back to kind of, talk about it a little further.
A lot of the prompts are there.
According to the Internal Revenue Service, there are some key changes to be aware of. Tax credits are returning to 2019 levels, meaning if you've been receiving a refund, it may be significantly smaller or non-existent this year, like the child tax credit, earned income tax credit, and the child and dependent care credit that are reverting back to pre-pandemic levels.
So, as you heard there in that report, a lot of the reasons why you will be getting less of a refund this year is because a lot of the credits that were given during the pandemic are now being taken off the table. Specifically the child tax care credit, earned income tax credit, and the child and dependent care credit, which a lot of times individual and family income generators, income households use those credits as a deduction on their taxes to get back some of the money that, again, they've paid into the system in terms of taxes. So that's just an FYI. This year, a lot of people, and probably I'm pretty sure many people have already started to file, you will be getting a much smaller refund back this year. So, please be aware of that. But again, I'm talking about all of this because, like I said, I wanted to understand, where's the money going, right? You're collecting all these taxes. Where is it going? Of course, I have an assumption, right? I'm like, yeah, well, it's going to the government and the government does what the government does. But I wanted to really understand and get a breakdown of it. So that's what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to go through where your federal, and again, I'm focusing on federal taxes. Because if I go into state and local, I'd be talking for 3 hours trying to explain where all that money goes. So I just wanted to, focus on federal and really focus on income revenue. So all of us can have a better understanding. So, federal tax dollars, where is that headed? Or where does that go? So, I found a breakdown of where the money, I found a breakdown of how revenue or taxes are collected and where it's allocated to within the government. So first of all, let me do the breakdown so we have an understanding. So, the one of the highest sources of revenue generation for a country, and including the United States, is that they collect income taxes. Okay, so going here from a graph that I found on Treasury.gov, which is the site for the United States Treasury, they kind of give a breakdown of what type of taxes are collected and how much. So the highest amount of taxes collected are collected from individuals. That is you, that is me, that is us, right? Those are individuals who you have a salary job or you're 1099, however, you are compensated. The highest amount of collection or the highest amount of money in terms of taxes that are collected here in the United States are collected from individual income taxpayers, which is why oftentimes, especially during campaign time for all of these politicians, they are always telling you about how they're going to reduce taxes because they know that that is the number one or one of the largest revenue sources for the country. And they also know how much people don't like paying taxes. And I shouldn't say don't like paying taxes, but it's just the amount of tax that is paid definitely is a concern for many of us. And I don't want to speak for y'all, so I'm gonna speak for myself. It's a concern for me. I'm just like, what are we doing here? But anyway, so the largest amount of revenue collected, in terms of tax revenue collected, are collected from individual income tax earners. That's salary 1099. That amount last year, or I should say, reported for last year was about $1.3 trillion was collected in tax revenue last year from individual income taxpayers. And that represents over 50% of the income taxes. That represents over 50% of the revenue or the tax revenue that was collected by the U.S. government. So there is a reason why taxes are so heavily talked about, because it is the number one or one of the highest revenue generating vehicles for the United States government. So $1 trillion last year was collected in individual income tax. Now, below that, the second highest tax that was collected is for Social Security and Medicare taxes. So now, again, we all know, those of us who have worked jobs, or even if you 1099, when you pay your taxes, when you get that check, for people that on salary, you got all those little boxes, it's that one, that one, that one, that one when you're looking at your check. Well, this is the reason why, right? You got your FICA and then you got your Social Security and Medicare taxes. 30%, 37% of tax revenue that was collected last year was collected for Social Security and Medicare taxes. So just between the two, between individual income tax, right? That's the federal tax that you have to pay, and then Social Security and Medicare tax. You're talking about already 87%. Sorry about that. 87% of tax revenue last year was just from them two, individual taxes and then also Social Security and Medicare. Right behind that, the next amount is corporate income tax. Now, this is where, you go, well, I don't understand, right? I work for a corporation. Why is it that I, as the individual taxpayer, am contributing, more than 50% to tax revenue for the country? But the corporate income tax last year was only 7%. So now this is where it gets, and I'm hesitating because I'm walking a fine line, right? Because I sit on both sides of the coin, right? So, or I should say both sides of the line, right? As an individual income earner and also as a business owner that is a corporation, I have received the benefits as well of the corporate income tax. But nevertheless, it is still a very small amount compared to individuals who have to pay income taxes in this country. And that's a huge issue. So when you hear about, again, the arguments about the tax breaks for corporations and for the wealthy and things of that nature, a lot of it has to do with this ratio that I'm talking about right now. Because again, as individuals, wage earners, wage salary and wage earners in this country pay more taxes than corporations do. Now, you can argue, well, corporations pay, billions of dollars in taxes or millions of dollars in taxes because they find a lot of loopholes. But nevertheless, the individual tax earner is the engine that really supports a lot of the programs that take place in this country. And I'm going to get into that about how this money is then allocated after it's collected. I'm going to now talk about where it goes. So, but I wanted to just hit those highlights. And then after that, it kind of breaks out. You have estate taxes. That's another tax revenue. You have miscellaneous income. Then you also have excise tax is basically the excise tax is tax that is collected on goods. That's, cigarette sales, alcohol, gas. So when you go to get gas and you see that little tax, that's an excise tax. When you see if you smoke or you buy alcohol, those items are also taxed. So that kind of filters out in terms of what the tax revenue is, right? Because again, I wanted to kind of highlight what is being taxed or who is being taxed, so we have an understanding of that, right? So all of those taxes that I just went through, and I'll just quickly highlight them again: individual income tax, corporate tax, Social Security and Medicare tax, estate tax, miscellaneous tax, size tax. Last year, that accounted for $2 trillion in revenue for the United States. Okay? $2 trillion. So now you say, man, that's a lot of money. Where's that money going? Well, let me give you that breakdown. So I am reading, first let me check this. I was reading two articles here that kind of give a good breakdown. First, let me read this one here. I'm reading a good article that was posted on the Center on Budget and policy priorities, cbpp.org. And I give this information out because I encourage everyone to do the research. I am not, here to, just create information out of the blue air. The information that I give when I, open this mic and I do this podcast is accessible to everyone. I just try to get it and condense it as into small bits and pieces, so somebody can share it, and then you have the same information that I have. But I'm here on the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, and they did a breakdown of where does your federal, and again, I want to emphasize this, your federal tax income or your federal taxes go. So after you pay this money out to Social Security and the excise tax and your individual income tax, where does this money go? Well, they broke it out and they kind of, did a pie here. And of course, I'll post this in the video and also in my post. But the highest amount of federal tax income goes towards health insurance. And what is health insurance, right? Or health programs. What is that? What does that consist of? Well, the health programs here in the United States mostly consist of Medicaid, Medicare, and also you have children's health insurance, the Children's Health Insurance Program. And, a lot of times those programs are for individuals that are in certain states of need, right? States of need, not in states, but certain states of need. So, whether you are, low income or you're elderly or, you're a child without insurance, those programs are funded by your federal tax dollars to support those individuals that are in need of that. Now, I know people are listening and there's a million stories about the fraud that takes place in Medicaid, Medicaid, and Medicare. I understand. I'm just giving you the information. I'm just the messenger. That's it. I'm just the messenger. So 25% of your federal tax revenue or your taxes that you pay out, that's going towards major health programs or healthcare insurance. It's noted here, and I'm reading an article here on TurboTax. It says about 2/3 of the federal health program budget goes to Medicare, Medicaid, and CHIP, and then also requires matching payments from individual states. So money goes out by the government, by the federal government, and then states have to match those payments. But I don't want to go too far into that. So that's number one, right? Federal tax. Where does your federal tax go? Number one, it goes towards healthcare programs and health insurance for those programs that I talked about. Where's the other place? The next one down, Social Security. As I told you when I was talking about the breakdown, right? 50% of federal taxes are paid by individual, or you get individual income taxes, and then another 37% of the tax is allocated towards, or I should say another 37% of taxes are Social Security and Medicare tax. And then that, in terms of a breakdown, 21% of the taxes are allocated to that as well. Then the next one down is defense. Okay, defense. Now, when I'm reading about that, well, let me go back. So payments for Social Security system, again, it's about 21%. So let me just explain that so we have it clear. That means it's about, almost $1.2 trillion that is allocated to pay out Social Security benefits to those who qualify for Social Security. And, again, the Social Security system provides support for retirement, survivor benefits, along with disability payments as well. So, when that money comes in, okay, 21% of it is paid out to Social Security. So I want to make sure I made that clear. 37% is allocated, 21% is paid out. I hope I made that clear. If I didn't, I apologize. But the next one is defense and security. So 13, how much is that? Let me just be clear about that. That is 13%, right? So of your federal tax dollars, 13% are paid out to defense and security. What is defense and security? Defense and security is basically spent on the defense of the country, right? That is your Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. That is your Department of Homeland. That is your any defense department that you can think of. That's where that money goes. 13%. And of course, there's always conversations about cutting back what we're spending on defense spending because, a lot of people are making money from defense spending because it's not just employees or defense workers. A lot of times you have a lot of these defense contractors that get these huge deals and it's a whole mess. But defense spending, another 13% is spent on that from the money that's allocated from our taxes. And then I'm kind of rounding out, and I don't want to go too much into it. You then have your economic and security programs. A lot of these programs are what they call safety net programs. Safety net programs are unemployment, food stamps, low income housing assistance programs for children and abused programs for abused children and maybe domestic violence, things of that nature. They call them safety net programs. So another 11% of the money is paid out to that. And then it kind of rounds out from there. Then you have, benefits for your veterans and for federal retirees. You have transportation. You have science and medical research. That's NASA and things of that nature. Law enforcement, international, things of that nature. But the two things that I wanted to point out were in terms of where's your money being sent after it's collected is number one, we're paying interest on debt. And when you hear about the deficit, right? The deficit currently right now, I believe it sits at our national debt. I should say not the deficit, our national debt sits at about $31 trillion. When you hear that our debt is out of control as a country, well, we're paying interest on it. Just like if you own a home or a car or a credit card and you've borrowed money, you're paying interest on it. Well, the United States is doing the same. Now, they do this through Treasury bills and bonds, and I don't want to get too far into it because, again, this is not financial literacy or, a financial podcast. But basically, not only do other countries own these bonds that we give out and these treasury bills that we give out, but also there's a system internally that we utilize. And I'm talking very slow because I don't want to get too much deep into the weeds. But what I'm trying to explain is basically that in addition to the money that's collected from our taxes, right, that we're paying for defense, we're paying for Social Security, we're paying for health care, we're also paying debt that we owe to many, many people. And currently the national debt sits at $31 trillion a year. So I wanted to point that out. And then last but not least, out of all of the money that we collected, and again, last year we collected over $2 trillion, and I'm just talking about tax revenue. Last year we collected over $2 trillion in tax revenue. Out of all of the expenses that I just told you that we pay out from our tax revenue, only 3% goes towards education, right? And again, you constantly hear about the quality of education, especially in various areas of the country. We hear all the time quality of education, making sure each child is not left behind, making sure there's quality education. Well, we're really not, from a tax revenue standpoint, pouring our money into our educational system, which for many reasons can be kind of the finger, if you will, pointing towards why we have so many challenges within our education system, especially when it comes to compensation of teachers and quality of curriculum and things of that nature. But I wanted to point that out because that was mind-blowing to me, that $2 trillion was collected last year, and only 3% of that $2 trillion will go towards education, where we constantly hear about the challenges with education. We constantly hear about the out of control environment with student loans and so on and so forth. But I wanted to point that out because I thought that was very glaring in regards to taxes that are collected. So that's what I kind of wanted to review today. I wanted to talk about taxes. Like I said, I also wanted to kind of give a little bit of insight of where taxes are going, how much is being collected, and where it's going. Again, I'm going to, step back from the recommendations because I was going to give some recommendations on how to save or how to reduce your tax burden, but I think that will put me into a different type of space, which I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm going to refrain from that. But I do hope that this information was helpful and enlightening. If so, as always, we ask that you please share the information. Again, you can subscribe to the podcast. We are available on all podcast platforms. If you would like to leave a comment regarding the podcast this week, please feel free to reach out to me on any of the social platforms. I can be reached at I am Trey Evans. That is on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. And then you could also reach me at the show podcast, which is the People's Voice Podcast on Instagram. The People's Voice Podcast. So, as always, I appreciate your time today. Dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute. The People's Voice.